Imagine standing on a tiny volcanic island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The ground shakes with constant shelling. The air is thick with smoke, and every inch of land is fought over with unimaginable ferocity. This is Iwo Jima in 1945, one of the bloodiest battles of World War II. But Iwo Jima was not the beginning. By 1944, the Pacific War had reached a turning point. The Allies, led by the United States, were no longer on the defensive. Instead, they launched a brutal campaign across island after island, determined to bring Japan to its knees. This is the story of how the Allies fought across the vast Pacific, and how it all ended in the most devastating weapon ever unleashed in human history. By mid-1944, the tide of war had shifted. The Japanese Empire, once unstoppable, was now retreating. The United States had recovered from Pearl Harbor and turned its immense industrial power into a war machine. Aircraft carriers, battleships, and fleets of bombers filled the seas and skies. The strategy was called island hopping. Instead of attacking every Japanese-held island, the Allies carefully targeted key positions, cutting off supply lines and isolating enemy strongholds. One of the most crucial battles came in June 1944. The Battle of the Philippine Sea. Here, American carrier aircraft clashed with Japanese forces in what became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Japanese pilots, many poorly trained compared to their American counterparts, were slaughtered in the skies. Hundreds of Japanese planes were destroyed, crippling Japan's naval air power. And then came the liberation of the Philippines. For General Douglas MacArthur, it was personal. Forced to retreat in 1942, he had famously promised, "I shall return." In October 1944, MacArthur stepped ashore on Leyte Island, keeping his promise. But the Japanese would not give up easily. To stop the American advance, Japan launched its last great gamble, the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Fought in October 1944, it was the largest naval battle in history, stretching across 4 separate engagements. The Japanese threw everything they had left into the fight: battleships, cruisers, aircraft, and for the first time, kamikaze pilots. These suicide attacks shocked the Allies. Young Japanese pilots, flying planes packed with explosives, deliberately crashed into American ships. The tactic was terrifying, but it revealed Japan's desperation. Despite their sacrifice, Japan's navy was shattered. The once mighty fleet that had struck Pearl Harbor was now crippled beyond repair. From this point on, the seas belonged to the Allies. If the Allies wanted to bring the war directly to Japan, they needed bases close enough for long-range bombing raids. The tiny island of Iwo Jima became one such target. In February 1945, the U.S. Marines stormed the beaches under withering fire. The island, only 8 square miles, was defended by more than 20,000 Japanese troops, dug into a maze of bunkers, tunnels, and caves. Every hill, every ridge, every cave entrance was turned into a fortress. The battle dragged on for over a month. The cost was staggering. Nearly 7,000 Americans killed, and more than 20,000 wounded. Almost the entire Japanese garrison fought to the death. Yet, from this hellish battlefield came one of the most iconic images of the war: the raising of the American flag on Mount Suribachi. It symbolized both victory and sacrifice, a reminder of the brutal cost of each step closer to Japan. But worse was still to come. In April 1945, the Allies invaded Okinawa, the largest of the Ryukyu Islands and the last stepping stone before Japan itself. This battle would become the bloodiest of the Pacific War. The Japanese unleashed thousands of kamikaze attacks, sinking or damaging hundreds of Allied ships. On land, their soldiers fought with desperate ferocity, using caves and underground positions to prolong the battle. For nearly 3 months, the fighting raged. By the time it ended, more than 12,000 Americans were dead, along with over 100,000 Japanese soldiers. Even worse, tens of thousands of Okinawan civilians were caught in the crossfire. The sheer scale of bloodshed shocked the world. If this was what it cost to capture a single island, what would an invasion of Japan itself look like? The answer terrified Allied planners. While soldiers battled island to island, American bombers were bringing the war to Japan's home islands. From newly captured bases, fleets of B-29 Superfortress bombers began devastating Japanese cities. In March 1945, Tokyo was firebombed in one of the most destructive air raids in history. Hundreds of bombers dropped incendiary bombs, creating a massive firestorm. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash, and more than 100,000 civilians were killed in a single night. The strategy was brutal: to break Japan's will to fight by destroying its cities, industries, and morale. But even as the destruction mounted, Japan refused to surrender. That's when the Allies turned to a weapon unlike anything the world had ever seen. In the summer of 1945, the United States had developed the atomic bomb under the secret Manhattan Project. President Harry Truman faced a terrible decision: continue the war with a likely invasion that could cost millions of lives, or use this new weapon to force Japan's surrender. On August 6, 1945, the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. In an instant, the city was devastated. Tens of thousands killed. 3 days later, Nagasaki suffered the same fate. The scale of destruction was beyond comprehension. For Japan, the war was now unwinnable. On August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. World War II was finally over. The war in the Pacific had been one of the most brutal campaigns in history. From the island-hopping battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa to the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was a story of unimaginable sacrifice and destruction. For the Allies, victory came at a heavy price. For Japan, defeat brought devastation. And for the world, the dawn of the nuclear age would change history forever. The Pacific War had ended, but its echoes would shape the future of humanity. The Pacific War was a brutal and relentless struggle. From the beaches of Iwo Jima to the skies over Tokyo, every step forward came at a tremendous cost. Victory came, but the world was forever changed. The atomic age had begun, and humanity had witnessed the unimaginable power of war. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Subscribe to Duskin Times for more epic stories of courage, sacrifice, and the events that shaped our world. And stay tuned. Our next chapter will explore the world after the war, where new challenges and conflicts began to emerge.